In either 1880 or 1881, no one really knows for sure, there was a man that moved to Hastings here in central Nebraska named John O'Connor. This man was a simple, ordinary person, except for the fact that he only had 25 cents in his pocket when he had arrived in Hastings. O'Connor had no company or business that would amount to some money that large, but somehow he had $100,000 to his name when he passed. There are few actual records as to where he accumulated this money, but there have been multiple theories as to where this money came from and a few funny stories that we will explore in this documentary.
Okay. August the 12th, 1913, a shoemaker named John O'Connor died at the Nebraska Sanitarium in Hastings. The Nebraska Sanitarium was a Seventh-day Adventist hospital which no longer exists. After Mr. O'Connor died, the mortician collected his body, and then he wanted to notify any next of kin of Mr. O'Connor's death. And it was then that the people in Hastings discovered that no one knew if John O'Connor had next of kin. In fact, no one really knew anything about John O'Connor, despite the fact that he had lived in Hastings since at least 1879.
O'Connor was a shoemaker and repairer in a shop in downtown Hastings, Nebraska, on the corner of First Street and St. Joseph Avenue, in an area that still flourishes in the economy today. A profession of this kind was not known to have made a large amount of money, and especially some of what O'Connor passed away with. John O'Connor was known to have only one photograph of him alive, and he is shown in this photograph with his partner, Ed Wass, in his shop. John O'Connor lived a very secret and quiet life that no one really knew what he did in his spare time, and he kept it that way. O'Connor didn't live a social life that would be considered typical during his lifetime, and this may have something to do with why no one really knows who he was and how he got his fortune. John O'Connor was a single male with no offsprings on record, and this correlates very well with his lifestyle and provides good evidence as to why no one came forward to claim his fortune. During the census form of 1900, O'Connor lists himself as being born in the country of Ireland. He obviously came to America for either the opportunity or the chance to get away from Ireland for some reason. Many believe that he came overseas with his fortune. He also lived in two other areas in the United States before finally settling in Hastings, Nebraska, where he passed away on August 17, 1913, in the Nebraska Sanitarium, which is a Seventh-day Adventist hospital that no longer stands today. A funny story about John O'Connor is that he was really big into the Catholic Church, and he got into an argument with the priest one day, and he never attended the church ever again. And then when he was dying, he was over at the Adventist Church on 9th Street, and they brought in a priest to give him last rites, and he turned over onto his side and looked away and then died without getting his last rites. John O'Connor's body was embalmed for many years after his death, so that maybe a relative that there were no records of could claim the fortune. Now, how could it be that someone with this amount of money had no relatives or strong relationships that didn't come forward? Since no one did come forward with the evidence that they could claim his fortune, the case was appointed to the courts. The case couldn't be settled at the local level, so the case was appointed to the Nebraska Supreme Court. The O'Connor case still had no luck of settling at the state level, and the case was sent to the United States Supreme Court. The case was eventually ruled to having no recipient for the fortune, and the money was given to the state of Nebraska. Adams County was then given a small sum of the fortune, which wasn't even enough to cover the court costs that Adams County paid out during the case, and the case was then closed. During the case, it became a national attraction. People from all around came to claim his fortune, and went as far as to forging wills with his name on it, claiming to leave all of the fortune to them. The case made Hastings, Nebraska a household name because of the pure chaos it caused.
And he showed up with a satchel full of papers, and when he passed away, the mortician looked for the satchel and it went missing. And no one ever knows what was in there. Could have been important papers. They showed up to his place looking for clues, and they found a stove, and it was full of ashes of papers that no one even knew. He was like a ghost.
But who was John O'Connor? The most popular rumor was that he was part of the infamous Jesse James gang.
I've read about many of his adventures, but one of the most popular and exciting of these is his possible train robbing. The Jesse James gang, as they were called, were said to have robbed over 23 trains coming in and out of central Nebraska. These mostly passenger trains could have brought in thousands of dollars for them to split, robbing people for all they had and leaving them with nothing in the new frontier. This brought into question whether he could have accumulated his large fortune just by train robbing, but these trains could have been carrying very important and rich people of the time trying to take over the West.
Claims were made about him, but nothing was ever proven as to who John O'Connor really was. And to this day, no one can answer that question definitely. Who was John O'Connor? So there isn't really much more known about him now than was known the day he died.